And now, chapter 22 of The Last Boy on Earth. Hope. The dream was long and exhausting, leading down pathways immeasurable in real-world dimensions, through the farthest reaches of her imagination. She'd been traveling for what seemed a very long time, at night, through dark landscapes, toward no known destination. In the dream, Kaylee was alone and moving ever onward, inexorably toward more confusion, more unfamiliar and untrodden ground. Wherever she was going, she had a feeling in the pit of her stomach that it wasn't going to lead her back into the light. She was alone, driving a truck, navigating through dark lanes that cut through mountain passes, through dark tunnels and under starless skies. Everything was gray, and no color tinted her dream world. From all appearances, the truck was a troop carrier, the kind she had seen arrive at the hospital when the soldiers had taken control, the back covered in canvas and tied down with ropes. The cab showed 2 lit dials on the dashboard, and interestingly enough, there was a long stick shift and a clutch she had to operate with her left foot. In her waking hours, Kaylee would not have had the slightest idea how to drive stick, but in her dreams, she was a seasoned trucker. She had the idea that in the truck's bed behind her, something of immense importance waited, so necessary to someone somewhere that she could not afford to dally. Twice she had driven through villages in the darkness. In each one there was a single bulb burning and a single street lamp, revealing shadows and just enough of what lay beneath to ignite her imagination. It was a falling down world through which she drove, devoid of people or any movement other than her own. She was immersed in a deep depression, a vast sea of darkness through which she piloted the truck. She could sense a change in the world. A sense of urgency pervaded her mind as she pressed the pedal down to the floor and double-clutched up the hills, over the forested mountains. In her dream, Kaylee was alone. She wore army fatigues and was unwashed, offending her own sensibilities with soot and grime. But it was inherent with their dream occupation and her dream world. A low drone came to her ears like a didgeridoo, the dull drone of truck tires on the crackled pothole pavement. From time to time, she had the feeling that she was driving past people as they stood there on the sides of the dark road in the country, just out of the range of her headlights. She could imagine unblinking eyes staring back at her, watching her, even judging her. As long as she was moving, she sensed that these invisible watchers were content to stay where they were, but she felt that if she stopped, they might emerge from the shadowlands of this eternal night and move toward her with dire purpose. Onward she drove in the dream world, seeking something and feeling increasingly desperate. As the miles crawled away beneath her, the feeling that the creatures in the darkness wanted to interrupt her journey now took precedence in her mind. She kept glancing more deeply into the depths of the ditches and beyond, expecting their advance. Like something seen from the corner of her eye, she saw the form, but only after she had slammed into it and sent it flying ahead of her. She stopped the truck and emerged from it like an insect from a chrysalis. Begrudgingly, she made her way toward the thing in the road. What was it? Was it human? Was it an animal? She had nothing but her headlights to illuminate the scene, but from what she could see, she'd hit something that was neither human nor animal, but both. It had been standing on 2 feet when she struck it, but it was hypermuscular for a human. Hair covered its body, and its face was something that only could exist truly in a dream. It wasn't a single face, but several, like the bones beneath the flesh were alive, maggoty and writhing with mealworms. It was in constant motion and was anything but human. Had she killed it? It wasn't moving. She poked it with her foot, but the massive form remained still. She didn't dare move any closer, and she was filled with disgust and loathing for the thing in the road. Was this Grendel? Was this the monster that Brady claimed to have fought? Time was burning in her dream, and she turned around to go back to the truck, but was halted when the great claw of the creature suddenly clamped around her ankle, twisting her back to its form and drawing her down to the ground. "You are not going to escape this time," it spat from broken teeth and bloody mouth. She struggled enough to break free and found that she could barely move, as though paralysis had painted her body with a thick coat of pain. Every movement required the highest amount of effort she could muster, but she made her way back to the cab of the truck. Once inside, she started driving, moving in madness through the darkness toward uncertainty. She left the creature behind, still alive on the road, but with the dreadful premonition that it was loping behind her, just beyond her sight, getting closer with every leap. Even in her dreams, he hunted her. That would mean that he was more than Dr. Grindle after all. Had she just seen in her dream what Brady had faced on the top floor of the hospital when he rescued her? Was this Grendel? She drove at breakneck speed, careening around curves, never using the brake, only able to think of forward motion. She saw the lake in the distance as the moon, which heretofore had been absent, peeked out from behind a appalling cloud. Water. For some reason, she knew she needed to get to water, so she found the dirt track that veered from the main road and led down to the gravel shore of a lake set deep in the woods. Leaving the truck running, she parked as close to the shore as she could and found her meandering way down to the edge. Before she made her way to the water's edge, she found herself racked with curiosity and went to the back of the troop carrier, untying a strap, looking inside. At first, it was too dark to see her cargo, but upon closer inspection, she could see it was a person, a young person, curled up in a fetal position near the front of the bed, unmoving. The youngster was wearing army fatigues, and it was clear that this poor child was somehow wounded or sick. As she climbed in to investigate further, she found herself up against an invisible wall that bounded the child's edges and made it impossible for her to touch it. She could barely discern the rise and fall of the child's chest, but she could not clearly see the child's face. Finding no success, she could feel the rising frustration and anger grunting in the background. And then she heard it. Water. The lake was singing to her. It sounded like crystal rubbed across the rim in a myriad of notes and octaves. She left the truck bed and found her way to the lakeside, falling to her knees. She plunged both hands into the water, and suddenly the world exploded. What had been night was suddenly day. What had been gray was multicolored and bright. What had been depressing was suddenly delightful. It was like the land of Oz after the death of the Wicked Witch of the West. Around her, the trees and bushes swayed gently back and forth in a breeze. The truck was still running behind her, and she could see that its lights were still on, but she was no longer dressed in army fatigues. She found herself in a lovely form-fitting dress with finely laced sandals. When she looked into the water, she saw elegance and beauty gazing back at her. Who was this person? Was that her reflection? She had transformed into a vision of loveliness. What was this dream? Or nightmare within a vision? And then the water sang to her. It didn't speak. It was 1,000 sitars being picked and strummed, a timeless raga, a hammered dulcimer weaving its melody with the humming of the very earth itself. You are safe here, in this place, it sang to her. Where am I? She asked aloud, speaking to the water, and it heard her. You are in the world as it was meant to be from the beginning of all things. You are in a world that truly is, beneath the mask of vision. In the time of people and their doings, so few found their way here. We are pleased that you have made it so far. We know the dream journey is difficult. Why am I here? She inquired. We have tried to speak to you in the waking world, but the dream world is closer to our own home. It is easier to speak to you in dreams. Who are you? We are of the waters that flow among, betwixt, and between the worlds. We girdle the world of humanity. We are Styx, Lethe, and 1,000 other names for water that humans have invented to label us. We are the ocean sea, and are known by many names. I don't understand, she said simply. All of life is born in water, and born to the world on water. Before you were born, you traveled on the water toward the world, and when your body eventually dies and all that was physical does perish, what is left will travel upon the waters again, toward. In her dream mind, she thought of the boundary between the world of life and the world of death in so many ancient cultures. I can hear your voice in the waking world, can't I? She inquired. The voices sang. You are the conduit to all the remaining humans, our way in. We chose you at the beginning of things, when first we glimpsed the future. You can see the future? She asked. We are of the water before Eden fell. We have lingered here since time began. All water is connected to all other water. All water is the same throughout time. All water is one. We were created deep within and have circulated throughout the universes. We are the matrix, and life cannot exist without us. The rain on the dinosaur's back, the snow on Beethoven's shoulder, the water at the wedding at Cana turned into wine. It is the same water, not new or different. We see the future, the beginning, the now, and we see that today is forever. Well, what do you want of me? We have a message. What message? She wondered, not fearful but curious, so strong was the sense of peace that this lake emanated. First, you must learn to listen to the waters of the world when you awaken. So many things interfere, and some of what you see is real, but some is your imagination. In the waking world, you will know the difference. We will speak to you, but you must learn to listen. You are the companion of one known as the Renamer. He is a boy now, but he will become something much more powerful. He sees the world as it is, even now, when his ability to see is newly awakened. Doubt him no longer and see to this. You alone can save him. You alone are destined for this task. If he does not survive the harrowings that follow, humans will cease to exist forever. So we have called you to sing you your name. My name is Kaylee, she said. They made such music then in reply that she knew her name was not only Kaylee, but something else, something from before her birth, from a time before the foundations of the earth were laid, stone by stone. It was not a name she could pronounce or even imagine, and when she knew that the sounds falling upon her ears were a name and not simply a melody, she was seized and surprised by a joy she had not felt in her entire life. Her soul jumped up. She swam in laughter. She was immersed in the light of the truth of it, her real name. The music slowed and eventually returned to the tinkling of bells and the harp sounds of water. We have named you. Now you will understand. What will I understand? The way things truly are and your relationship with all the life of the earth, they answered. She was confused, flooded as she was by the emotions so strong in this dream world, so strong that if they had been felt in the waking world, they would have utterly overwhelmed her. You must return. It is not long before you will be tested. Both of you must go through the fire to obtain the hardness of stone and the tenacity of time. She knew what she must do. In the dream, she had to deliver the child in the back of the truck to its final destination. Only then could she awaken. Where do I take this child? she asked of those of the waters. Take him to the end of the road. Do not abandon him. Safeguard him when he is weak. Feed him when he is hungry. Cover him when he is cold. But I can't even touch him, she replied. Yet you must care for him. She withdrew her hands from the lake and immediately was thrust back into the depressing darkness of the twilight world. She arose and made her way to the truck and again climbed into the dark bed of it. She crouched down next to the child in the back, but this time she put her hand softly to its shoulder and found that if she didn't push, but instead simply rested her hand there gently, it penetrated the invisible field that encased it. The child stirred and turned as though in sleep, but she saw its face and understood what those of the waters had meant. For there, in the back of the dingy, grimy truck, lay the sick and twisted form of the child whose name she knew well. For some strange reason, in a bone-deep way, she understood that she was now his guardian, and that his final destination was her final destination. Just before she woke up from the strangest of dreams and was thrust back into the abandonment and all that it required of her, she ran her fingers through the child's hair and whispered the child's name. Funny, she thought, but simply saying his name brought her relief, even comfort. It was what was left in the bottom of the box after Pandora had opened it. He was a dream child, a personification of an idea, presenting in her dream as a person. She whispered his name. Hope. End of chapter.